Hey everyone, welcome to Mythology Explained. In the last video, we discussed biblically accurate angels, and it was there that we unearthed a shocking truth. They're not winged babies or glowing men in robes, but in fact terrifying, often alien-looking beings that radiate divine power. And today, we'll be taking a look at the other side of the coin. Because if those things were the messengers of divine order, then what could the opposite possibly look like? Red skin, horns, maybe a pitchfork? Well, the truth is, that's Hollywood. Because when it comes to the Bible, or at least other ancient texts, demons get way stranger, and most importantly, way more disturbing. But here's the issue. Most demons in the Bible aren't described physically at all. In fact, the appearance of many demons is largely left to the imagination, with the Bible focusing more on their actions and influence than their appearance. They're described as unclean spirits, tempters, deceivers, or agents of chaos, but rarely, if ever, do we get details about what they look like. And this is where other ancient texts outside the Bible help fill in the gaps. Texts like the Book of Enoch, the Testament of Solomon, the Book of Tobit, and many others. Much of the physical or symbolic description we do have of demons comes from these apocryphal, pseudepigraphal, and intertestamental sources, rather than the Bible itself. Later on, Christian demonology would expand on these ideas even further, layering in new interpretations, names, and terrifying forms. So today, we're diving into the real origins of demonic imagery, the ones people don't talk about. I'll be covering 3 demons today, but if you want me to cover more in future videos, then leave a comment down below and give the video a like. Anyway, without further ado, this is what demons actually look like. Starting with Aazil. In pop culture, Aazil is often portrayed as a standard demon or devil, horned, red-skinned, and malevolent, sometimes even interchangeable with Satan himself. But in reality, Aazil's form isn't that straightforward. In fact, in the earliest biblical reference, he isn't described physically at all, just associated with wilderness, sin, and expulsion. Aazil first appears in Leviticus 16:10, in the context of the Day of Atonement ritual, where a goat bearing the sins of the people is sent into the wilderness to Aazil. While scholars debate whether Aazil is a location, a concept, or a being, later texts like Enoch, chapters 8-10, depict him clearly as a powerful fallen angel, one of the leaders of the Watchers who corrupted mankind. Aazil's image grows even darker in the Apocalypse of Abraham, where he appears first as an unclean bird that descends upon Abraham's sacrificial offering. This scene echoes Genesis 15:11, where birds descend on Abraham's sacrifice. But in the Apocalypse of Abraham, the bird speaks, taunting him. The angel identifies it as Aazil, calling him a corrupter of mankind whose domain is the earth, not heaven. He's linked to the serpent and hell, and later described in monstrous form. 7 heads, 14 faces, human limbs, and 12 wings. Far from the pop culture devil, Aazil is a chaotic, ancient force of deception and ruin. It's the ancient texts that paint a much more unique and haunting image. In Enoch, Aazil is not a fiery monster, but a bringer of forbidden knowledge, teaching humans metalworking, weapons, ornamentation, and war. For this transgression, he is bound hand and foot, cast into utter darkness, and buried beneath sharp stones in a desolate wasteland. Visually, he's less of a snarling beast, and more like a cosmic prisoner, submerged in the earth, immobilized, and awaiting judgment. A being defined not by his horns, but by the ruin he caused and the punishment that followed. In later rabbinical Judaism, Aazil's demonic identity fades. The rabbis focused on the scapegoat ritual's symbolic power and often interpreted Aazil as a physical location, possibly a cliff or remote mountain. Mystical and fringe texts occasionally preserved his rebellious image, but mainstream Jewish tradition largely spiritualized or neutralized him. In Islamic tradition, Aazil is sometimes considered the original name of Iblis, the jinn who refused to bow to Adam and was cast out of heaven. Across these traditions, Aazil evolves, from a cryptic footnote in the Torah to a cosmic villain in apocalyptic literature. But one thing remains constant. He is a symbol of transgression, impurity, and the peril of forbidden knowledge. Not a cartoonish devil, but something much older and far more unnerving. Asmodeus. In pop culture, Asmodeus is typically portrayed as the archetypal demon of lust, seductive, smooth-talking, and cruel. He appears in everything from horror films to video games, TV shows, often framed as one of the 7 princes of hell, or even the embodiment of the sin of lust itself. But like many demonic figures, the real Asmodeus is far more complex, and far older than the caricature suggests. Asmodeus first appears by name in the Book of Tobit, a deuterocanonical text included in the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, but not in the Hebrew canon. There, he is a malevolent spirit who kills 7 successive husbands of a woman named Sarah, out of jealousy and spite. He's eventually exorcised by the Archangel Raphael using a ritual involving fish organs and incense. In Tobit, Asmodeus is portrayed not as a cosmic force of evil, but as a vindictive, almost personal demon, driven by obsession, jealousy, and desire. No physical description is provided, but his presence is deeply feared. His character expands later in Jewish folklore, particularly in the Talmud and Midrash. There, Asmodeus takes on a more mischievous and at times almost comedic role. He's the king of demons, but not always overtly evil. Though often dangerous, Asmodeus is portrayed here with intelligence, pride, and cunning. Less a mindless monster, more a trickster with a dark edge. He is sometimes described as part human, part spirit, with supernatural strength and knowledge. Some accounts say he has 3 heads, one of a man, one of a bull, and one of a ram, the feet of a rooster, and the tail of a serpent. In Islamic tradition, Asmodeus doesn't appear by name, but scholars have occasionally linked him to Iblis or to specific jinn associated with seduction and disruption. In Christian demonology, however, he is solidified as one of hell's major princes. He is catalogued as a powerful demon who governs sensuality and carnal desire, often said to ride a dragon, breathe fire, or hold dominion over gambling and vice. Here, his form is often grotesque and hybridized, part man, part beast, wearing a crown, and wielding deadly charm. Across these traditions, Asmodeus shifts from jealous tormentor to demon king to lustful tempter. But at his core, he represents more than just desire. He is the danger of unchecked obsession, the madness of possession, and the chaos that can hide beneath pleasure. Legion. In pop culture, Legion is often treated like a singular demon, a terrifying entity with a hive mind, countless voices, and immense power. He's shown as a sort of supernatural virus, a swarm of evil crammed into one tortured host. You'll find him in horror movies, comic books, and games, usually depicted as shadowy, many-eyed, or glitching between identities. But while the name Legion has become a go-to shorthand for demonic possession, its biblical origin is both more specific and more symbolic. Legion appears in the Synoptic Gospels, specifically Mark 5, Luke 8, and Matthew 8. In the story, Jesus encounters a man possessed by many demons, living among tombs and unable to be restrained. When Jesus asks his name, the reply is chilling. "My name is Legion, for we are many." There's no detailed description of what Legion looks like, because Legion isn't a thing, so much as a collective, a mass infestation of spirits that fractures and overwhelms identity. However, later Christian tradition and demonological texts often reinterpret Legion as a singular entity, an archdemon or commander of demonic armies. Legion becomes a named demon with authority over a specific number of spirits, often associated with possession, madness, and destruction. This shift from many to one reflects how ancient ambiguity was streamlined into later hierarchical models of hell. But Legion never truly had one fixed form. In the Gospels, the man possessed is described as self-mutilating, shrieking, naked, and impossibly strong, living in isolation, tormented night and day. The demons speak through him, using his voice, but there is no visual manifestation beyond the suffering of the host. The horror of Legion lies not in monstrous appearance, but in fragmentation, an identity shattered by spiritual invasion. In this way, Legion is perhaps the most psychological of all biblical demons. He represents a breakdown of the self, multiple wills fighting for control of a single body. His terror lies not in fire or fangs, but in the loss of identity, sanity, and sovereignty. And that's it for today's video. If you want me to cover more demons, let me know down in the comment section below. Until next time, remember, Sometimes the most terrifying forces are the ones that once stood in the light.